everyone. Welcome back to Rooted Provider. I'm Becca Mattie, your host and owner of Grow Beyond Collective. I am providing these episodes of Rooted Provider to just discuss some of the things that we all have concerns with as healthcare providers, that things that can sometimes get in the way of feeling really fulfilled with our practice. And so today I'm going to share a few tips that are related to everyone's favorite piece of work. And maybe some people actually do enjoy it. It is not my favorite, but documentation, especially those daily notes, the invisible work of healthcare that happens in the background when we're not client facing. It's really critical for insurance and clinical care, but it's often the very thing that leads to burnout because it's always present, it's always on the to-do list, and it also just requires a certain piece of brain power that is not always there when we've used up all of our creativity and that all of our creativity. Speaking of brain power, mine is running low today. Okay, so let's just look at how to make it more of a tool for your practice rather than a burden on your shoulders that you have to get through just to get to the next day. So let's think about how we can really start to utilize what is considered best practice out there, that point of care documentation, one that I've really pushed back on because it's not a great strategy if you are a pediatric practitioner, but standard practice says that we need to have our documentation completed for an appointment within 24 hours. But real time is going to give us some of that best accuracy. And so the struggle is it can feel cold to stare into your screen while you're having an appointment with a client and trying to open them up to being vulnerable, and then you're just kind of over here with your screen. So we can think about just some ways to make this a little bit less of a cold feeling interaction and still manage to get that point of service documentation done. So thinking about our body language, you want to make sure your body is turned towards your client. Even if your desktop computer is stationary, you could maybe move the keyboard over here. And I know this feels like common sense, but when we're in the thick of it and we're going from patient to patient every 15, 20, 45 minutes, and we don't have much time in between, thinking about these little things ahead of time will help clear the path for a better interaction overall. But so turning your body towards the client and then telling your client what you're writing while you're writing it, or even before your start. So make them part of the process and a collaborator in the note that you are creating. So they feel less like a subject just being observed. And now, thinking about pediatrics, it can be even harder to create that therapeutic relationship if I'm behind a screen, especially nowadays, because if a screen is out, the clients that I was working with were distracted by that screen. It was shifting the way the session was moving. So I used more of a mobile pen and paper and explained to, curious clients or those who were a little older that I'm just writing down the activities we're doing or why we're doing them because, so I don't forget. So I was using this moment just to help teach them that I have to write down what we do in each session, as well as be able to remember what we do and why we do each of the things. So thinking about mastering that documentation outside of the session, after we've tried out different methods for doing that point of service documentation, if that does or does not work for you, trying some of those strategies, we want to think about having some time carved out outside of client care to then fulfill those documentation needs. So the barrier that often exists is that we build up documentation to be this monster in our heads that's going to take hours, when in reality, it usually takes less time than we think. At least that's true for me. If that's true for you, welcome. You are in good company, and it often takes less time if I'm really able to focus on it. So creating almost like a ritual around my documentation is what needs to occur for me to really get it done and to get it done efficiently. So I use the do not disturb function on my computer and my phone. If you share space with other providers, an office space or, a team collab area, using a physical do not disturb sign either on your chair or on your door can make a big difference. And you just got to let your team members know, I'm not trying to be rude, but I am distractible and I will do whatever it takes to push off this documentation piece. I will help you spell that word. I will help you figure out your issue with technology because I don't want to be doing this right now. And that is me speaking from experience. So if you are a chatty practitioner like I am, you need that do not disturb sign. So other distractions may come in less. Another thing to consider is noise canceling headphones, whether or not they're playing some sort of background music for you, if that helps keep you focused, or if they're just there to, one, be another visual do not disturb sign, or to keep the noise level down for you in the background. The timer method, one that I use not only for my clients, but for me. So I think, I've got 3 notes. It should take me no more than an hour. At least that's what I build up in my head. And when I do this full ritual, typically that only actually takes me like maybe 30 minutes. And when you know there's an end with the timer method, you're less likely to fall down the rabbit hole of getting distracted, as opposed to, I know this is going to take me a long time anyway, so I'm just going to go ahead and check my email really quick. So having that timer will allow you to say, okay, in 1 hour, no matter where I'm at with this process, I am done, at least for a break. And it'll keep you from getting distracted. And I am not above letting you know that this is a tool that I use for kids to be able to focus and a tool that I use to be able to focus. It's just the human condition, especially now with technology and social media and all these external factors trying to grab our attention constantly, that we need as many tools and strategies as we can to help our brain and our body focus in. So now that we've thought about the strategies that are related to just getting the documentation done, we also want to think about making our documentation work for us. So thinking about writing for whoever is reading your documentation. So if you don't know who's reading it, it's time to maybe ask. Is it only insurance companies? Is it your supervisor? Is it the patient? Who is reading your notes? So thinking about that is going to help you better formulate what structure of note you're going to make or how you're going to write it. We've all written and used that best practice of writing the SOAP note, the subjective, objective, assessment, and progress, if you have a therapeutic practice. But within each of those sections, thinking about who will be reading them so that you can make sure your note is of great value. So you don't want to obviously reinvent the wheel every time you write a note. Use that SOAP structure as your skeleton. Then you want to also utilize smart phrases in your EMR system. Many of them have this. They're just templates for common activities or common phrases that you use pretty much in every note. So an example of this actually I wasn't using in an EMR system, but had been created at a practice that I interned at as a student. We had a Google Doc of all of the toys and activities that were in the clinic and what they targeted. So for example, client engaged in jumping on trampoline to promote X, Y, and Z. And so those were our smart phrases that we could pull from, because we often used very similar or the same activities and games for different clients. And then we would just edit what specifically we were targeting with that activity and how it related to their goal. So if you work in a clinic that has students, this could be a really good practice or project for them to create those smart phrases and think through what each of the activities or common activities that you do in your practice, and think about what they are targeting and what goals they can be utilized for within that objective section. Finally, thinking about your audience, you want to make sure that your note, if it is going to insurance, that it is aligned with insurance. So ensure your documentation justifies the billing codes that you are using. If you bill a complex code, your note should paint the picture of the complexity of the session and why that justifies that code. Now, this isn't common. I shouldn't say that. It is probably best practice to make sure your note is justifying the code you're using. However, I've worked in settings where the billing code was chosen because that's the one we always use. And that, obviously didn't sit well, especially when we didn't know what the billing code actually translated to in dollar amounts. So if we were all always choosing that complex code, that was going to translate to a higher dollar amount billed to that insurance. So I want to make sure that you are feeling really clear and confident about the paper trail that's happening between your session to what's coming out of the client's insurance or what is coming out of their pocket. That is more available to you if you work in a smaller clinic versus a bigger institution. So it might take a little bit more time to figure out what that trail looks like. But I think it is worth it if you have the time or the curiosity about who is reading your note and what is your note being utilized for. The next thing I want to just touch on today is AI in documentation and how that's changing the landscape really of how we are documenting. I am seeing more and more of those HIPAA compliant AI tools being utilized within EMR systems. They are becoming more available and more affordable. And I know other therapists that utilize these AI tools that record their session in real time and then provide them with the daily note. And then they can go through and edit what they need to make it the most applicable for their session, and then they're done. So what was something that took 20-30 minutes now is taking 5 to 10 minutes maybe to just edit it and make sure. And as AI continues to grow and build its knowledge of what we do as therapists or what you do as a healthcare provider, if you're not a therapist, it's only going to get better. So reaching out and figuring out if your EMR offers something like that, or is there a tool out there that you maybe haven't explored yet that can support your documentation, and giving that a try, okay? Just making sure that you are, utilizing things that are HIPAA compliant, like we all know, but AI can be a really massive time saver for these daily documentation notes, and it can cater to the audience that we are trying to, especially if that audience is maybe an insurance company or someone who is filing the claim. What I want to know from you is, what is your biggest hurdle right now with documentation? Is it the time, the tech, the emotional drain of just feeling disconnected from your clients when you're trying to push through and reach that productivity standard? I would just really love to hear from you and think about, where can we utilize strategies and tools to make this hidden part of healthcare a little bit more manageable and just feel more important to the process, because it is critical to the process, obviously, but we want to make sure that it feels just as important as it is. So this was a topic of discussion in one of our recent Grow Beyond Collective meetings. And if you're looking for a community that talks about these real situations and this real side of running a practice, tracking visit numbers without losing your mind or, staying on top of documentation without feeling guilty, I really would love for you to come join the conversation. So all I want to say is let's really work together to rekindle our passion for this work, and I'll see you in the next episode.